Now, as I mentioned earlier, a Western Australian Liberal has broken ranks with his own party, demanding that the state's hard border be wound back, as was promised by Premier Mark McGowan on February the 5th. Let's cross now to Perth and catch up with Liberal MP Tjorn Sibma. Thanks for joining us, Tjorn. Tell us why it's such a controversial thing for an opposition MP to oppose what the government's doing.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity. I think probably part of the reason is your introduction to your show. COVID has absolutely thwarted, compromised all sense of perspective and proportion in public debate. And strangely, the longer COVID stays with us, I think the quality of the debate seems to completely deteriorate. I said something very straightforward, I thought, yesterday, and actually consistent with what my opposition colleagues have been saying. I was probably more explicit about actually holding the Premier to the hard date commitment. But the reason I did that is because in early November last year, Mark McGowan showed the community of Western Australia that there was a glimmer of hope, that there was light at the end of the tunnel. And last Thursday night, he switched the light off.
He sure did. He did a complete backflip. And this is crazy. And look, we've spoken to Luke Torrey, who's an intensive care specialist doctor, and he's saying on medical grounds there's no reason to keep that border closed. He says it should be open on February the 5th. Other doctors are saying the same. It just astounds me that your opposition, the opposition you're part of, won't criticise this decision. It's so obvious that border should be open. But no wonder you got smashed at the last election, because then under leader Zach Kirkup, you were too afraid to criticise what the government was doing too.
Look, my whole purpose in public life, and I think this purpose is shared by my colleagues in the opposition, we're here for one reason only, and that's to represent the best interests of Western Australians. The continuation of the hard border, and I just want to say this might be unpopular throughout the nation, but in our estimation, the hard border did its job. It was a very brutal and effective instrument. However, it now is a zero COVID policy relic. It's an instrument which now serves no public health purpose, and in fact is undermining public health in Western Australia for two reasons. One of which is a border is an impediment to the movement of labour, obviously. We are suffering a massive skills shortage in Western Australia, and it's most pronounced in the health sector. The hard border announcement, the interminable forever border, is convincing healthcare practitioners in Western Australia to leave Western Australia, and it's dissuading the ones that we need from entering the state. And the second point is this: we have built up a well of public support for giving up freedoms, giving up individual liberties to do the right thing by the most vulnerable members in our community. But that has always been a social contract. We set, I think, as a state, the highest threshold for vaccination in Australia to open up. We hit that 90% vaccination threshold for everybody 12 and above. And McGowan has ripped the rug out from underneath people. That's completely acceptable and needs to be called out.
Absolutely. It's a no-brainer, and politicians should be leading public opinion, not following it. At least you've had the confidence, the strength to get out there and make this call. But it seems like your colleagues and your leader, David Honey, are sort of waiting to follow public opinion. It's so logical that you should get rid of that border. Do you think you can convince your colleagues to make this the official Liberal opposition position?
Well, the position is that McGowan actually needs to fulfil his commitment and open the state up, because everybody realises that it is an unsustainable public policy setting, completely unsustainable. If there's any split or difference of opinion, I'd put it differently. I think the only split that really exists in COVID politics in Western Australia is between Premier Mark McGowan and integrity in public life. That is it. The fear... People have been anxious enough in Western Australia, and to some degree the anxiety has sort of been inversely proportional to what has happened in the eastern states, because COVID for us here in Western Australia is still such, and it's a bit of a mystery. But McGowan has played the politics of fear on this day in and day out. We have the majority of businesses in Western Australia saying, for God's sake, open up. We have credible medical practitioners like Luke Torrey, who was on your show the other evening, saying now is the time to do it. You will never have a perfect time, but this is the most perfect it can be. Get on and do it. All I'm doing is asking the Premier to fulfil a commitment. There is still time to open up commit to that 5th of Feb opening. Every business in the state, every community group, every individual has planned their lives around that date.
Yeah, all
they
you're
demand
doing,
that certainty, and I think you should get on with it.
All you're doing is talking sense, and the rest of your Liberal colleagues ought to do the same. Thanks so much for joining us, Tjorn.
Pleasure.